I don't understand what the point of being alive is if this is what sobriety is. I found a sponsor who was young and cool, and I didn't want to believe in God because I was too smart because I had a PhD, and she didn't believe in God, and she told me that I could resent anyone I wanted if it was justified, and it was a whole mess. But she was sober, and I like, it's all part of the journey, right? Like I think if I had gone from where I was to like finding someone like the sponsor I have today, I would have thought she was absolutely insane. So to have,
It was good.
to have this person as a stepping stone to just show me that it was like possible to not drink, and still live, I think was important, but it was just not the level of recovery that I was eventually going to need. So what happens is she's my sponsor for a while. I'm meeting with her weekly. I'm going to meetings all the time. My home group was actually the Hollywood Young People's meeting out of Los Angeles because I thought it seemed cool. And I was like, everything's on Zoom anyway. I've actually gone to visit them, like, since a couple years later, be like,
Nice.
hey, this is so fun. You guys are my original home group. But so I was doing it like mostly online and had the sponsor, but I was like showing up and doing the things and like doing the steps of recovery. But I was doing them all without a higher power. And I have come to learn that for me, doesn't get me to the point that I need to be at I think in the end it was going to be actually stay sober. So I get to December of 2020 and I was more miserable than I had ever been in my entire life. Like drinking or not drinking, hungover or not hungover. By December of that year, I mostly had stopped, like I was sober. So I had finally been convinced. I don't even know. There were so many weird things that like Phenibut was this weird thing I was ordering on the internet that definitely doesn't count as sober. So I'd gotten like all of those out of my system. And then realized how like anxious, confused, miserable. So I just start like collecting all these diagnoses, right? Like, oh, I have generalized anxiety disorder. I have panic disorder. I have whatever. So I was having daily panic
What does
attacks.
collecting them mean?
I just mean I'm like going to a psychologist and being like, there's something wrong with me. And they're like, oh yes, you're anxious. But like, I'm not seeing that as like something that can be dealt with in recovery. I'm seeing that as like, okay, I'm going to need this medication for this and this medication for this. And it was kind of just nutty. And I get to December of that year. And for me,
we're December 2020.
December 2020. So like 6-7 months into this journey that I'm trying. And one of actually the reasons why I was always afraid to get sober was because every time I'd stopped drinking in the past, the eating disorder got worse. So like those 2 months when I was finishing my dissertation, I vomited, I think like every day, like binged and threw up every day. So the eating, because it's just another way of coping with all the stuff that was all the fear, all the anger, all the whatever. So as soon as I stopped drinking, I'm back in those. So I'd always been afraid of that. And that is exactly what had happened. By December of 2020, I was having a panic attack every day. So my anxiety is just all over the place. I was binging and purging like 4 or 5 times a day. So I'm spending the whole day just like eating a gallon of ice cream, throwing it up. And there is like a release that comes in that's very much like addiction. And so my life, I was at this point where I'm like, why am I even alive?
Nothing changed.
Yeah. Why even be sober if my life is going to be this? So I don't ever know that I have friends who have had like suicidal obsession where like that's all that you can think about. And I don't think that I ever got to the point where I would say that I had a suicidal obsession, but I definitely was in a place of like, I don't understand what the point of being alive is if this is what sobriety is.